Hey YouTube, this is my 2013 Kawasaki ZX14R. I drag race it fairly regularly, and so I change the gearing from time to time. This is just doing the rear sprocket. I'm going from a 42 to a 44, which I find works, so far, works the best for me. And I run a 16 up front, and this is sort of my procedure. I take typically 10-15 minutes to get it done, and I find it fairly simple. Some may find it challenging if this is your first time or you don't do it very often, but yeah, I have my own little sort of procedure that I go through. I like to keep everything really as clean as possible, and so I take the time to wipe the wheel off and different things like that, just to keep everything looking as good as can be. Backing the adjustment nuts off and then pushing that forward just gives me the slack in the chain just to run that chain off, and just put a little rag there to protect the swing arm and lay the chain down on top of it, and then it's free to work on. And sometimes if you have another person there to help, it does make it a little bit easier just to hold the rear tire for you. But if you're not afraid to put your back and legs into it a little bit, you can usually slide that out without too much trouble. I like to make sure I don't let that brake caliper fall and hit the wheel. It can scratch your wheels up, so I keep a hand underneath that at all times until I can pull it off and lay it down. And then the wheel can just sit there. And while I pull the hub out, I have a spare hub. They're relatively inexpensive off of eBay, and so I have mounted the sprocket, the 44 sprocket, on the other hub already, and they just push straight in. There's rubber, sort of rubber cushions, rubber cushions inside there, and it doesn't take much usually just to get them to sit in place. And then the exact same procedure, just watch that there are spacers inside there. So there's an inner and an outer on the left side, and then an outside one on the right. So you just have to make sure they all kind of stay in place. That's sort of the challenge of getting that axle nut back, or axle shaft back inside there. Sometimes you have to wiggle it around a little bit. And again, like I said, if you have a second person, it makes it a little bit easier. But with practice, it goes pretty simple. And yeah, you have to hold the caliper. You can't see it obviously in this, but you have to hold that caliper on the right hand side so it doesn't fall off before the axle gets through there. And then I just put the nut on loose while I adjust the chain. And this is, like I said, an 8-inch extension, and so it, yeah, the marks are all there. The alignment marks and everything are all there. You can follow along to see, make sure you get both sides the same. Again, I like to keep things nice and clean, and then just give the rear wheel a little bit light tug backwards just to set the tension, and then you can turn those adjustment bolts up kind of to within, a 1/8 of an inch or so of where they're supposed to be, and then do the last adjustment with a wrench. Just makes it all a little bit easier. And one thing that I take a fairly keen interest in is is watching where the sprocket touches every tooth touches the chain, where it runs in the chain. So I take a look. You'll see here in a second where I just like to spin the rear wheel and then take a look at where the contact point of the teeth is on the chain, and you can see if a chain is or a sprocket is wearing a little bit crooked. Sometimes it'll wear one side worse than the other, and those marks give you a pretty good idea of what is aligned, but I don't trust them 100% all the time. I do a line of sight, and then if I'm really fussy, I'll even take the tape measure and just double check from side to side, obviously, to a common point on the bike, and that way you know you're getting it pretty darn close. And like I said, they're just fine-tuning with the, they're just getting a line of sight and fine-tuning with the wrench. And I run it's not super tight. I don't mind having a little slack in it. I think a little bit of slack isn't a bad thing. Doesn't rob any power, or as little power as possible. And as long as it isn't slapping around too much and making a lot of noise, I'm not too worried about it. On the street, then maybe, a little bit tighter. But if I'm just heading to the track next weekend, so I'm gonna have that relatively loose. And the bike's gone really well, at least for me. Anyways, I'm pretty happy. It's all naturally aspirated. It's air shifted. I strapped the front forks down, and I have a PC5 with an exhaust system on it, but it's really quite simple setup. All stock clutch. The stock clutch pack, I have heavier springs in it. Just get a little bit more confidence off the line and shifts for me. But it goes well. It's gone 896 at 153, and with 215 pounds fully suited, and not super aggressive off the line, but getting there. I got a 153 60 foot, and I think I can easily put it well into the 1.4s with a little bit more practice. And hoping for 8 in the 8 mark, 880s this season. And then if all goes well, my wife wants to get on it and try her hand a little, just take it easy and work her way in. Hopefully she's obviously, she's a lot lighter than me, so she should have the power to weight ratio is in her favor. Who knows, maybe she'll even be better at it than I am. And here I'm just turning the wheel to set the tension on those sprocket nuts. Some people might torque those to spec. I've been spinning wrenches for a while, so it's not my first rodeo. I've got pretty good feel of what is even. It's one of those things that some might be fussy about. I'm not, and at least not when I do it. And then just a good check over, make sure things are aligned again, just checking that contact point of the chain and the sprocket, just having a good look at the wear to see that it's they're meeting each other where they should be. And here I'm just writing on, I just make a quick mark with a black felt marker where that 1644 gear setup is, in just so that the next time I put it together I can sort of have that as a ballpark place to start. And all pretty straightforward. Should be good to go for the next race night. Thanks for watching.